Well, guys, this is it. Not only is this my final episode of Sonic Jam, it's my final episode ever covering a classic Sonic game here on Perfect Playthroughs. But before we dive into our final task at hand and accomplish everything this game has to offer, I've decided to pay each remaining game a quick visit. Then and only then will I be able to bring the classic era of Sonic to a close. Classic Era consists of 35 Sonic games in total, 13 on console, 12 on the Game Gear, 6 arcade games, and 4 edutainment titles. So far, we have beaten 24 of them, including the entire Game Gear lineup, as well as 10 out of 13 console games and 2 of the arcade titles, specifically Sega Sonic the Hedgehog and Sonic the Fighters. That just leaves us with 11 games remaining, including Sonic Jam itself, and I intend to cover all of them in release order, starting with the Genesis games and working my way down towards the edutainment titles. Most of these games are only a few minutes long, so I'll be saving Sonic Jam for the very end. First game on the docket is Sonic Eraser, a game only released in Japan for their MegaNet subscription service back in 1991. Yes, Japan really was that far ahead of us when it came to online gaming. Other games were released as part of their service as well, with a few, like Flicky or Fail Labyrinth, even being popular enough to receive physical releases overseas. Let's just say Sonic Eraser was not one of those games. I mean, it's a pretty bad sign when the only semblance of a cover for this game is just a plain old book with the title on it, no pictures or anything. Which is ironic given the fact that this game has absolutely no storyline and no characters outside of Sonic fighting another Sonic. That's literally the entire game. A shitty puzzler consisting of one level, one match. Then the game ends. You can adjust the difficulty settings, but who cares? The game is so bare bones in its content that they couldn't even be bothered to include Eggman as a CPU opponent. And the gameplay is so basic yet obtuse in its design that even though the CPU was kicking my ass, I was still able to win and beat the game in spite of all that. So let me ask you guys this. Why should I keep playing after having beaten it on my very first try? Why adjust the levels or learn the ins and outs of the game's mechanics until I've gotten sufficiently good enough at the game to warrant a perfect playthrough? It wouldn't even make for a good April Fool's Day episode. The game just exists, with so little love or care for it that's nothing more to Sega than a mouth to feed. It's functional and playable, so that must mean it's good enough for it to be good, right? Tell that to either version of Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine. At least those games gave you 13 opponents with varying different strategies to take down, all while the game's speed gets steadily faster. And if you beat the game on the easiest setting, the game goads you into playing on harder settings until you've beaten on the hardest setting possible. And the Game Gear version actually provides you with an additional puzzle mode in order to really get your brain tinkering. Sonic Eraser has none of that, and as a result, I can't find anything remotely redeemable about this game. Even the music is appalling. So consider this the closest thing to a perfect playthrough that you will ever see me do of this game, because I have no desire to revisit this game ever again. Once the credits start rolling, I'm moving on. Yeah, I think Roger Murtaugh said it best and he said it often. Because I'm feeling way too old for Wacky Worlds Creativity Studio. The nicest thing I can say about this game is that it is inoffensive and harmless enough for little kids to enjoy. Basically, it's Sega's answer to Mario Paint, right down to even featuring Sonic on the cover, and making him the playable avatar as we select one of the many different plants we can explore. And, well, you paint, you add stuff in, you move stuff around, and you shape the plants however you see fit. Still, there's really nothing here to gravitate towards, at least as far as perfect playthroughs are concerned. After all, the main objective of a perfect playthrough is to accomplish everything the game has to offer. Well, I visited every world, messed with all the options, and there isn't a single thing to accomplish. It's a creativity game with no objectives, and it is the main reason why I'm struggling to find anything to say about this. No joke, I've tried as hard as I could to find something to gravitate towards, and I just couldn't do it. It's inoffensive and it does its job well. Now I've got another 10 minutes worth of footage to show for my efforts, but perfect playthrough of a game like this is like doing a perfect playthrough of Reader Rabbit, or on one of those Disney storybook games for the old Windows 95. Why bother? What you see is what you get, and if you get bored with it, then the only thing to do is to turn it off. Well, I'm getting bored, so I'm turning this off right now. Brief intermission, but there are still technically 2 more Sonic games released on the Sega Genesis that I've yet to cover. 6-Pack and Sonic Classics in 3-in-1. These are just simple compilations of earlier Sega games, including the first Sonic in both titles. By all accounts, we have officially completed every single Sonic game ever released on the Sega Genesis. And with the Game Gear also cleared out, it is finally time to dip our toes into the arcade scene and give these Japan exclusive titles a try. First up, Waku Waku Sonic Patrol Car. And yes, I am dead serious. That key ride you see here, you know, like the ones by the front entrance of your local Walmart, that's an actual video game. Granted, there is a rating system, so a perfect playthrough is technically on the table. It's only 3 minutes long, and you cannot die in this game, no matter how many times you get hit. So I could, in theory, grind this game over and over again until I get a 5-star rating. That's literally all you have to do to achieve a perfect playthrough of this game. It is that pathetically easy. But frankly, I don't think it's worth the hassle, especially with all the delays this video has gotten. I'll let the clip play out to its conclusion just to show how short and easy this game is, but as for my final thoughts, given this game released in 1991 alongside Sonic Eraser, it's no wonder Sonic struggled to find an audience in Japan. Released in 1993, SegaSonic Cosmo Fighter is very much of the same vein as Sonic Patrol Car, right down to it being a key ride with a 3-minute Sonic game built into it. And just like Patrol Car, Cosmo Fighter is only 3 minutes long, you cannot die in it, and there is a ranking system built into it. However, being a shoot-'em-up, it's actually way harder to perform well in and earn that 5-star rating. Still, it does make the gameplay feel a lot more rewarding this time around, so for what it's worth, I do consider Sonic Cosmo Fighter to be an improvement, though not by a whole lot. Granted, I've never ridden inside one of these cabinets, I'm frankly far too big to try anyways, but from a gameplay perspective, Cosmo Fighter is a bit more replayable than its predecessor. If only it hadn't taken so long to get this video out, then maybe, just maybe, I would have considered chasing perfection with these two titles. And then we've got SegaSonic Popcorn Shop, also released in 1993, and it is exactly what the title says that it is, a popcorn making machine with a built-in mini game. It was meant to be a fun little way of actually making your popcorn so that you're not just standing there waiting 3 minutes for it to pop. You start by choosing between salt, butter, or chili flavored, and you're off. Doing well only affects how quickly you get your popcorn, not how much of it that you actually get. But because it's a ROM, nothing I really do matters because I'm getting nothing out of this, rendering SegaSonic Popcorn Shop as nothing more than a name novelty of a game. Maybe if you're in Japan you happen upon this arcade cabinet at an amusement park or a movie theater, you could give it a try. But as far as seeking this out as just a game, it's a hard pass. Believe it or not, Sega actually did develop a follow-up to SegaSonic Popcorn Shop titled SegaSonic Candy Scramble. And while we do have a picture of the game's cabinet, plans to mass-produce the arcade cabinet were ultimately cancelled, and the game never saw the light of day. We do know a little bit about the game thanks to its demonstration at a Japanese trade show, so we do know that Fish game was made. Whether or not it still exists, however, remains to be seen, because the guy that owns the cabinet never dumped the game's ROMs onto the internet, making it lost media. However, if the game ever does resurface, I'll be sure to give it a go, if nothing else but for completionist's sake. Sadly, I don't have any photos of our last arcade machine we're going to play, but unlike Cotton Candy Scramble, the ROM is available to play free of charge on the internet. SegaSonic Bros is yet another unreleased Sonic game that finished development back in 1992, but with plans to mass produce the cabinets all across Japan. However, poor market testing for the game led to the cancellation of the game's release, and believe it or not, it's actually the best Sonic game I've played so far. This game's basically like a mix of Mean Bean Machine and Blue Sphere. You fill up an entire perimeter of spheres with a monocolored sphere and clear everything out from within said perimeter. Get enough chains going and you'll earn a Chaos Emerald. Rinse, repeat until you get a game over. You know, your typical competitive puzzler. And since this game was never given an official release anyways, it probably makes sense to assume that this game doesn't have an end state. So a perfect playthrough isn't exactly in the cards for this game, as much fun as I may have had playing it. Still, the ROM is available online, so give it a go if you're curious. Another quick intermission. Two titles I'd like to quickly mention are the first two Sonic games ported over to the Mega Play cabinets. They're basically the same as their Genesis counterparts, but streamlined into a more arcade-friendly experience. That means fewer levels, no special stages, tighter time limits, and fewer extra lives. But since they are otherwise the exact same games as the Genesis versions, but with less content, I don't consider them a part of the final count of classic era Sonic titles. That done, it's time to take on the edutainment titles. Ironically, the only one I was able to find was the one title that never saw an official release, Sonic's Edusoft for the Master System. Apparently, Sega commissioned US Golden Tier Tech into developing a Sonic edutainment title exclusively for the Master System, and they never heard back from Sega despite finishing the game, and as a result had gone unreleased until the internet age. As for the other three titles, Sonic's Gameworld, Tails Music Maker, and Sonic's Schoolhouse, I looked and looked, and even with all the delays to this playthrough, I still could not find playable ROMs or emulators for these games anywhere. The first two titles, Sonic's Gameworld and Tails Music Maker, were released exclusively for Sega's Pico device, an interactive peripheral that you need to hook up to your PC or television set in order to play. Let's just say most people nowadays don't know what the heck a Pico device is, because there's basically nothing as far as ROMs are concerned for this device. Probably due to how difficult it'd be to play Pico games without the device itself, because you literally need it in order to select your options. As for Sonic Schoolhouse, I was really looking forward to covering this game, even as far back as last year's Summer of Sega. It would have been among my final batch of weekend rentals to close out Summer Sega, but unfortunately, having been released on Windows PC in 1996, this game can only be played on the older models, and emulating old PC games on your computer is a colossal pain in the ass. There were a couple times where I thought I found a way to play these games, only to be let down over and over again, either due to a missing program needed to run it, or due to an obnoxious paywall. The only place where you can find these three games really available online is on Steam. And honestly, I don't think it'd be worth the time or money to install a few games I would otherwise have no interest in playing beyond 1 or 2 sessions. Maybe someday, when they become readily available free of charge, I'll give them the weekend rental treatment, but for now, I will have to give them a hard pass. Anyways, going back to Sonic's Edusoft, it's honestly kind of impressive for an edutainment game. Like how the developers at US Golden Tier Tech were able to impose sprites from the original Genesis release into a Master System game. Considering that all the other Master System Sonic games are just ports of the Game Gear versions, Sonic's Edusoft is the most visually striking of the Sonic Master System games. It's also kinda comparable to Mario Party, except all the mini-games revolve around basic math and spelling. There are some bonus games spliced in between as well, but they're pretty brutal and don't offer up much of a reward. And while these games are mostly identical, each math and spelling minigame is themed after their environment. So if you're at a picnic, all the words you need to spell are gonna be food related. On a track, sports related, and so on and so forth. You can earn anywhere from 1 to 3 points every time you clear one of these math or spelling challenges. You need to earn these points in order to open these gates, as well as to gain access to even more of the game's world. The amount varies depending on the fence and the difficulty setting, but you can choose the prerequisites by playing all the minigames on the hardest setting, then setting the difficulty setting back to the easiest levels. But if you're looking for a real challenge, bring some friends along and play the game on the hardest setting and the fastest speeds. It can get really brutal, really fast, but it's a lot of fun. And like SegaSonic Bros before it, in spite never gaining an official release, it actually feels like a real video game. One that takes 20 or so minutes to beat. And had this game saw an official release, I honestly would consider doing a perfect playthrough of this. One last thing I want to discuss before we close out Sonic Jam, and that's cancelled Sonic titles. I've more or less covered these three already, but those were unreleased games. What I'm talking about are the games that were cancelled midway through development. We know next to nothing about most of these titles, and only 3 of them have any gameplay footage available to watch. The first of these is Sonic 16 for the Genesis. It was originally planned to be a platforming beat-em-up adaptation of the Saturday morning cartoon show known as Sat AM. All we have is this proof of concept tech demo that the folks at Sega Technical Institute had put together for Sega Japan. Series creator Yuji Naka saw the footage and felt the game was too slow for Sonic, so it was scrapped with no further work done on the title. Next we've got Sonic Crackers, or Crackers as localized on the title screen. Believe it or not, it's the only one of the 3 cancelled games with a playable ROM online. Obviously, this game started off life as a playable tech demo for a new tethering mechanic that STI wanted to experiment with for a potential mainline entry. And while Sega Japan was impressed with the mechanics, the decision was made to instead develop the next mainline entry for the then upcoming Saturn, and Sonic Crackers would instead be spun off into Knuckles Chaotix for the 32X. And that leads us to our final cancelled Sonic game, and by far the most infamous of them all, Sonic Extreme. Planned to be Sonic's first foray into 3D, as well as Sega's direct answer to Mario 64 and Crash Bandicoot, the story behind this game's turbulent history is the topic of many a video essay, and is one I'm not going to go into greater detail here. A video I highly recommend that I check out is the documentary from Stuff We Play, which goes into extensive detail behind this game's turbulent development cycle and eventual demise. To put a long story short, one of their lead programmers nearly died trying to finish this game in time for the Christmas '96 season. And when he was forced to step down, Sega came to the bitter realization that the game in question wasn't going to be ready in time, so they delayed the release for another year. Sonic Team attempted to salvage the situation, but by then it became abundantly clear that the center would be discontinued by early '98. And so, Sonic Extreme was quietly cancelled and stripped for parts, repurposed into other games like Sonic Schoolhouse, Sonic the Fighters, Sonic R, the Saturn and PC ports of 3D Blast, and, of course, Sonic Jam's very own Sonic World. Now that we've covered every single Sonic game that we could from the classic era, all that's left for us to do now is to bring my perfect playthrough of Sonic Jam to a close. And without further ado, let's bring this classic era to a close. Well guys, this is finally it at long last. The final episode not just of Sonic Jam, but of classic era Sonic in general. This is it. After having 100% every single Sonic game of this collection, and having viewed all the different museums and checked out everything this game has to offer, the world of Sonic World, all we have left to do now is mission mode. Just hop on this platform and off to the races. Our objective, there are 8 missions in total. We have to fulfill each of them in the allotted time. The first one starts off pretty easy enough. Just collect 20 rings and then race back to the finish. No, you can't do them all at once. First of all, it would take way too long to finish. Number two, you can only complete them as you unlock them. So, for example, 3 red points, as in checkpoints, very easy to find. As they're basically just right out in the open, like that. Now we are back to the mission pad. Just passing by some rings. Now we need 50 rings. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, every time you land on that pad, all the collectibles that you got, and everything, they completely disappear. So I just have to collect 50 rings, so I'm just gonna go quickly around. And yes, you have to beat the times, each of the individual times to clear everything. So that's that for you. So touch Miles. Are you? Couldn't they word that a little less awkwardly? Touch Miles? Don't you mean? I mean, just say tag Tails. I think that would be a little less egregious. Alright, here are Tails now, so I'm gonna go look for him. Tails can be pretty hard to find and essentially tag because he's always flying around the level. So the tip to get this time really fast is to just wait on the pad until he flies by, and then touch him. Little sicko. What did Sonic say in that one? Sonic says, "That's no good." I mean, you probably haven't seen any of those quite yet because they are because from this point on, the obstacles that we need a gun for are pretty well hidden. They're usually either on an island or concealed by something. Alright, here's another one. Here's the other one. Here we are. 2 more. There's another one around the island. And the last one requires us going to an area we haven't been to so far today. This middle area, and there we go. Completely done, so we just have to hurry back. I'll turn around. And 7 secret cards, those are the cheat. Those are where we found all the cheat codes last time, and fortunately we don't have to read any of the cheat codes. We just have to tag them. So first one's on the bridge, second one's right here. Third one is by the character house, right behind it, to be precise. And there's the fourth one. And we have to, oh yeah, we have to hop on the island, right here. 4, one's by the waterfall. Tails flying by, and by the waterfall, it's in the water. Another one's behind this museum. The last one is on another island in the center area, but can only be reached via moving platform. Alright, okay. Also, let's hurry back. And of course, the final mission, penultimate mission, 3 balloons. Where are the balloons? Well, they are even more hidden than the blue points, and the first one is by far the hardest one to pop. Last popsicle second while you're at max velocity. Now you ride this moving platform. Gotta fidget around so I don't move off, and the other two balloons should otherwise be pretty easy to reach. Or at least pretty easy to pop. Tails is flying by. And, yeah, that is done. Final mission now. 100 rings. That's all of them in all of Sonic World. So we found them last time. I'm sure we can find them again just as quickly, if not more so, because I was slacking off last time. So I want to go to the middle area next. Just grab those 2 rings and then make my way back to the middle area. And just so I don't forget, I'm gonna cross this bridge, collect all these rings, get those springs, and then I'm gonna head back where I started. Oh wait, but not before crossing this platform because there are 2 rings we need to pick up. So, pretty optimal routing here, I would say. Maybe not the best time, we're not going to get the best time because, especially since we had to wait for that platform, but still pretty optimal. Want to cross the river first. Alright, definitely not optimal, but it's gonna be pretty bloody fast here. Final 3 rings are right by the exit, so land on this platform. And as a reward for complete all 8 missions, a giant ring is now hovering by the waterfall. And there is and just to prove it, that's every single mission in the game already done and accounted for. Now you might notice too that there was a floating platform that doesn't have anything on it that is right by the waterfall. That is how we reach that giant ring at the end. So, I bet you're thinking this giant ring leads to the very next level of the game, right? Well, believe it or not, you'd be wrong. So that takes us to the end credits of Sonic Jam proper. That's right, we have officially beaten the game. Now you might be thinking, wait, that's it? That's literally everything? And yeah, that is absolutely everything done with Sonic Jam. Now there is still one more thing left after the end credits that you guys are rewarded for beating Sonic World, and it is a new camera. It is like a new camera. I think it's like a bird's eye lens or something. It will be, and that camera actually has its own dedicated button, and I think it's the Z button. I know, it's been a while. I was holding on to this footage until I finished filming everything else up to this point. But what are my thoughts of Sonic Jam? Awesome. Awesome, awesome. I would have loved this game as a kid. Maybe it would have worn down. Maybe I would have worn off on me over time and lower in my overall values. But being able to play Sonic 1, 2, 3 and Knuckles and all the lock-on games therein, as well as the Sonic World Tech demo, I would never stop playing this game. Having said that, I am somewhat grateful with the way things ultimately turned out in my life. Like, had I not decided to stick with the PlayStation, I never would have discovered the Crash Bandicoot games, or the Spyro games, or Final Fantasy, or Kingdom Hearts. Like, so many great franchises would have gone undiscovered had I just stuck with what I knew and what I loved already, and that's Sega and Sonic. Keep in mind, at that point in time that Sonic Jam was coming out, all we had was Tekken 2, and a couple sports and games and otherwise subpar titles, but as an adult, I would still rank it as one of my top 5 Sonic games of all time. If nothing else before the compilation, but Sonic World is a nice bonus. Anyways, let's show off this new camera angle. Yeah, my problem is that the camera just shifts quite erratically, so it causes me to just come to a dead stop. It does make for some great cinematic shots though, like the last one I'm gonna show off here. And after that, I will officially be done with Sonic Jam for good. And so ends the classic era of Sonic. While I still have the 3 edutainment titles that still need the weekend rental treatment, Sonic Jam is otherwise the final Sonic game I will ever cover from this era here on Perfect Playthroughs. It's very much a bittersweet ending to be sure, and my one regret is I wasn't able to do a little bit more to pay tribute to this historically great era, especially in commemoration of the Blue Blur's 35th anniversary. Regardless, I had a great time playing through all these different Sonic games, and if something even bigger come up, I wouldn't mind doing a proper perfect playthrough for either Sonic Schoolhouse or a potentially finished Sonic Extreme. I'm gonna miss covering these games to be sure. As for my 4th game of Christmas, believe it or not, I've already got my next game lined up. And in fact, I've got 2. One of which being this year's selection for the Groundhog Grind. Make sure you guys tune in February 1st to find out which of these remaining games it's gonna be. And for all you die-hard Sonic fans out there, I hope you all spread the word on this channel, and don't forget to leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. Your support really helps the channel out a lot. But until next time, this is Mike Gordon, sign out.